Tonight, Julian Assange, founder of WikiLeaks, is a wanted man. His whereabouts are unknown. Interpol, the international police agency, has issued a so-called red notice alerting police around the world that Julian Assange is wanted for questioning regarding allegations of sexual misconduct in Sweden. Meanwhile, here in the United States, lawmakers are also pushing for criminal prosecution of him under America's Espionage Act. Joining us now is Julian's attorney, Mark Stevens, from London. Mark, thank you very much for joining us. Where is your client as we speak?
A pleasure, Judge. Well, I never comment on where Julian is. There have been a number of calls for him to be assassinated, and it would be, I think, foolhardy to identify it. But one thing that is important for you to understand, and I think for the viewers to understand, is that the security services of the United Kingdom, the United States, and other countries know exactly where Julian is right now, and so that if he's ever wanted, they can actually get hold of him. The police know how to get in touch with him. Right. The Swedish prosecutor knows how to get hold of him. So everybody knows where he is, except the media. Let me ask you about this Swedish prosecutor, and correct me if I'm wrong. As I understand it, these charges of sexual assault were examined by the Swedish prosecutor and dismissed. She decided not to bring a charge against him. And then suddenly, at the same time that WikiLeaks dropped its last dump of documents, those would be the ones that embarrassed Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the prosecutor decides to call him in. He volunteers to come in. She rejects his volunteering to come in and instead issues an international arrest warrant. Question: isn't this all some sort of a made-up subterfuge to keep him away from the media? Well, it's certainly a surreal Swedish fairy tale. The only thing that hasn't walked onto stage yet are the trolls, and I'm waiting for them to arrive. And I think the problem we have is that you're right. There are uncanny timings about this. And, of course, the timing that when WikiLeaks was about to launch the cables, there were cyber attacks which knocked their computer servers offline for a period of time. And, of course, the newspapers that were running some of these stories, the traditional media, were so worried about that they immediately brought forward their publications. Unbelievable. Mark, in the United States, as I think you know, we have opinions from the United States Supreme Court that absolutely, totally, and completely protect people in the media who deliver to the public items that are of public interest. Certainly the documents that your client released or his organization released are of public interest. Does he have the same protections in the United Kingdom? Does he have the same protections in continental Europe? He has much stronger protections here than he does in the United States, interestingly. And, of course, you're right, because these documents were the electronic equivalent of the brown envelope, the traditional brown envelope that journalists have been getting from the 1960s, from the Pentagon Papers case. And the publication of this material is just the same and in just the same tradition. Of course, the problem that people are having difficulty with is that Julian Assange is a modern-day electronic journalist. Right. And as a result of that, the material that he gets, he publishes in electronic form. Now, that is no different to other people who do that, including many major newspapers. Understood. But I challenge you to find a single news organization around the world, and I represent a few. I challenge you to find a single one around the world that wouldn't have published this material if they got just one of the cables. Anybody who got these cables would publish it, no matter what their political predilections are, because it's highly newsworthy. Mark Stevens, lawyer for Julian Assange, thank you for joining us. What happens to WikiLeaks if Julian Assange is arrested? Joining us now is the spokesperson for WikiLeaks, Christian Refensen, and James Ball, a journalist who's been working with WikiLeaks. Welcome, both of you, to Freedom Watch. First, Christian, to you. Judge. What will happen to WikiLeaks if Julian Assange is arrested and incarcerated and can no longer run the organization?
Well, it's very important to understand that the organization is not a one-man show. We have dozens of people who have committed to full-time on working on projects. We have hundreds of volunteers. They are spread around the world, working in an online community. And WikiLeaks will continue no matter what. And it's important to understand as well that WikiLeaks represents an idea an idea that is increasing in its momentum, and it will continue even though WikiLeaks is taken down. There will be 10 more organizations starting up with the same idea.
Understood. James, are you releasing documents even as we speak, in addition to those that you released earlier in the week?
Yes, every night WikiLeaks is putting out new documents, as are all of the media organisations working on here. Despite the cyber attack, a document was released 3 hours ago talking about the Sri Lankan president in being involved in war crimes. There's a whole new drop, I think, happened. Probably even as we speak now, it'll be about that time. This is carrying on. This is huge material. It's really important, and everyone working on it is getting it out there.
Christiane, what is WikiLeaks' goal? What does it want to accomplish with these continued release of documents that governments once claimed and held as secret?
Well, we've seen governments become increasingly secretive in the last decade, for example, and we want to contribute in changing that course, turning the tide. We believe in the principle of democracy, and transparency is an integral part of democracy. Without transparency, documentary democracy is totally meaningless.
James,
so
some people,
a healthy society.
Some people have said that individuals could die as a result of this information becoming public. Are there any documents you wouldn't release? Are there any measures you would take to assure the safety of innocents who have no idea that their names are in these documents?
I think what has to be said is actually all of the media organisations working on this are actually taking care to protect people. If there's someone in China who's giving information about human rights or something, no one wants anything to happen to them. We have correspondents from all over, you know, the New York Times China correspondent, the Guardian China correspondent, checking those cables that are published to see what they're like. Of course WikiLeaks takes redaction seriously. It was said on the Iraq war logs that there were 300 names going to be in them by the Department of Defense. When they were actually published, of course, the whole things were published redacted and safe.
Got it.
And, you know, if you don't believe me that there's no evidence of harm, the Department of Defense have said the same.
Understood. Understood. Christiane, before we go, we understand here in America that you are about to release documents exposing the misdeeds of a large American bank. Is this true? And what bank is it?
I can't tell you now what bank it is, but I can confirm it is an American corporate bank institution. We will release this material in the new year.
Would the bank collapse? Would you bring the bank down, as Julian Assange once suggested, as a result of the release of these documents, James?
Who knows? I haven't seen it. I look forward to seeing it.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Anytime Julian wants to come on here, he knows how to find us. Coming up, former ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. What does he think about Julian Assange? Let's just say Assange better hope Interpol finds him before Bolton does. He's next.